Hey, it's Lou, and here's the thing. Originality is out of style, or at least that's the perception you'd get from pop culture. Remakes, reboots, and sequels dominate the box office. In fact, as of this recording, 9 of the top 10 highest grossing films of 2019 are a remake or part of a series. Disney, meanwhile, is reportedly developing over a dozen live-action remakes. But this tendency to recycle old ideas isn't limited to the silver screen. Television, music, video games, fashion, and even politics are reaching into the past and reviving bygone trends. At the heart of this redo culture is one of humanity's most useful emotions. I'm talking about nostalgia. It's so powerful, research reveals, that it makes people feel younger, more loved, more protected, more generous, more confident, less anxious, less lonely, and even warmer when they are cold. So, are we stuck with a world that will continually repeat itself? And is that even a bad thing? Originality isn't dead. It's just not that lucrative. Thomas Leitch, an English professor at the University of Delaware, told me that making a movie is by far the most expensive entertainment project ever undertaken in the history of the world. So, given the massive investment needed to bring a film to life, studios and their financiers are risk-averse. They're reluctant to bet on a novel concept. Instead, they prefer ideas with proven track records, hence all the superhero movies. By the way, this isn't a new phenomenon. Amanda Klein, an associate professor of film history at East Carolina University, told me that the first decade of the film industry often saw familiar characters and stories reimagined for the new medium. In 1905, for instance, Thomas Edison produced a film based on a popular postcard of a dog. Klein told me there's a direct line between that adaptation and a movie like 2012's Battleship,
I want everything loaded,
which adapted a board game.
Battleship sunk. Battleship sunk.
Yeah, now you're talking.
She added that cycles, sequels, spin-offs, remakes, and reboots, or what she calls multiplicities, trace their roots through centuries-old stories like King Arthur and his Round Table, a body of work that evolved over hundreds of years. Klein concluded that creative stealing is central to capitalism itself. I get her point. Just ask Snapchat about Instagram stories. Klein told me that there's so much content overload nowadays that the film and TV multiplicities cut through the clutter. When the audience feels overwhelmed by choice, they go with what they know. Perhaps that helps explain the fact that Friends and The Office were the 2 most watched shows on Netflix in 2018, according to research firm Jumpshot, although neither series produced a new episode in years. Klein added that multiplicities benefit from pre-awareness. That is, marketing money has already been spent hyping the first Iron Man, so the buzz snowballs with each subsequent film. A lot of the promotional work has already been done. In addition, when franchises are continually in theaters, when they are continually talked about, it makes it easier to sell lucrative ancillary products like toys, convention tickets, and t-shirts. Yet, there's a paradox at the heart of Hollywood's preference for reboots, remakes at all. Yes, they tend to be safe bets that generate eye-popping box office returns and merchandise sales, but they're relatively disliked. You often hear people compare them unfavorably to the pure original. Klein told me the dynamic is akin to fans who turn against their favorite indie band when they go mainstream. And in fact, a recent survey reveals that about 90% of reboots had lower ratings with audiences and critics than the originals. So, what gives here? If we prefer originals, why do we buy tickets to sequels, etc.? Well, perhaps it's because filmmakers are pushing our psychological buttons. Ben Ho, an associate professor of behavioral economics at Vassar College, told me movies and music that trigger memories of our carefree younger years put us in a warm and fuzzy mood. And, Ho told me, when we're feeling good, we're more likely to spend money. So I watched the trailer for this year's Lion King. It reminds me of my childhood when I saw the original at a birthday party, if I remember correctly, and I'm inclined to shell out the $15 for the live-action ticket. Leitch told me the distance between originals and remakes is often around 30 or 40 years. That allows teenagers who loved Top Gun in 1986 enough time to move into leadership positions at film studios to greenlight the 2020 version. Hull told me this also capitalizes on the fact that folks in their 30s and 40s tend to have the most disposable income, so their taste and their memories are often catered to by pop culture. He pointed me to research suggesting that our preference for music and other media is formed in our teens and early 20s when our brains are primed to explore new ideas. Holt told me this insight into the relationship between happy memories, positive mood, and the propensity to spend money is both well documented by researchers and well known in the business world. That's part of the reason we see so many marketing techniques that try to trigger our nostalgia, like arcade games in bars, the revival of retro logos, or the Backstreet Boys in an Old Navy commercial.
More stretch fits more people. And by more people, we mean...
Now, nostalgia has a bit of a tortured past. First diagnosed as a sickness in the 1600s in Switzerland, it was thought to be caused by the relentless yearning for the homeland. Symptoms include bouts of weeping, irregular heartbeat, and anorexia. The proposed causes of this affliction were varied, but included the idea that a demon inhabited the middle brain, whatever that is, or that it was brought on by the unremitting clanging of cowbells in the Swiss Alps. Even through the mid-20th century, nostalgia was considered a psychiatric disorder, but our modern conception of it has evolved. Clay Rutledge, a professor of social psychology at North Dakota State University, told me that nostalgia helps us counteract stress and alleviates existential threats, but it's much more than psychology's coping mechanism. That is, it's not just about protecting ourselves from negative feelings like anxiety and low self-esteem. Nostalgia also inspires us to do positive things like adopt a rosier outlook and develop social connections. Rutledge added that modern life and the onslaught of technology that came with it can be alienating, but our brains are hardwired for connection. We look for the threads that tie us to one another, and those threads can be shared cultural experiences like old films and TV. Moreover, film can actually connect people across generations. Parents who loved Toy Story in 1995 can share that experience with their kids by taking them to see Toy Story 4. Rutledge added that this search for a shared history for the answer to the question, who are we, has been going on for thousands of years. But he told me that the more chaos and uncertainty in society, the more people are drawn to nostalgia as a stabilizing force. No surprise then that Holt told me when people are nervous about the economy, when there's a recession, they tend to seek out the nostalgic. They want to comfort themselves. But during boom years, Holt told me, people tend to be more inclined to seek out originality. Leitch echoed this sentiment, telling me that the fundamental energy of nostalgia is discontent with the moment you're in. Leitch pointed me to the UK in the 1980s. The country was experiencing a crisis of identity as its global power waned. So, British heritage cinema chose to ignore all of that contemporary discontent and instead focused on happier times in British history. Leitch told me this wave of films often featured beautiful estates, elaborate clothing, and rich, good-looking aristocrats with power. In this way, nostalgic films are a form of escapism. Leitch told me that when people feel powerless, they turn to superhero movies. When they feel unloved, they might watch a romantic comedy. In other words, the fantasies movies offer become a form of compensation for what you lack in life. The question is, nostalgia might scratch the itch, but does it eliminate the itch? Or does it encourage you to keep scratching over and over, buying more and more movie tickets and merchandise in the process without solving the underlying problems? And does this process play out in politics too? And if we're continually supporting films and ideas that are familiar, does that create less space for truly unique work? After all, there's only so many movies that can be financed every year. Klein told me this question tends to ignore all the originality in multiplicities. They may recycle old stories, but they also reimagine them. They bring new style, new sensibility, new technology to the table. It's a balancing act between giving audiences something familiar, but also something new and exciting at the same time. In that way, Klein told me multiplicities allow for a level of complexity, of reference, of intertextuality that can be rewarding. She highlighted Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse as a recent example. It shares some of the themes and motifs of classic Spider-Man, but centers the story on the experiences of a young man of color. Leitch added that not all nostalgia has to have a tranquilizing effect. He told me to consider Saving Private Ryan. It's a movie about one of America's defining moments, D-Day, but it doesn't idealize what happened. It asks us to confront history in all its blood and gore, all its ugliness and complexity. To me, this type of nostalgia can be the most useful. If we're going to look to the past, let's at least get it right. Nostalgia of the remake, reboot, and sequel variety may offer a temporary good feeling, a fleeting warm glow, but I wonder if you'll be chasing that feeling forever without actually grasping it. Or, alternatively, maybe I'm overthinking this, and you should just enjoy whatever it is you like. Okay, I'm gonna go live my life.